The simplest thing you can do with the SRK is joining the edge of a board for gluing up panels. Set up by placing the rail parallel to the edge of the workpiece with the SRK and the router on the rail. With the bit lowered, move the rail until the bit is just beyond the edge. Move the traveler until the bit is near one end of the workpiece. Slide the rail until the bit is touching the edge of the workpiece. Lightly clamp the rail at that end. Slide the traveler until the bit is at the other end of the workpiece. Then slide the rail until the bit is touching the edge. Lightly clamp that end of the rail. Check that the bit is still touching the edge at the first end and tighten the clamp. Recheck the second end and tighten that clamp. Move the traveler so that the bit is clear of the edge. Start the router and make a pass along the edge. If the edge still needs cleaning, move the slide arm in another 32nd of an inch and make another pass. The result will be a clean, square, and straight edge. Using the same procedures, you can cut rabbets, but let's use another method for setting the rail parallel to the edge. Place the rail on the workpiece and put the SRK on the rail with the slide arm attached upside down and extended fully. Slide the rail and the SRK until the vertical part of the slide arm touches the edge of the workpiece. As with the previous method of alignment, set, check, and clamp each end of the rail. Once the rail is set, return the slide arm to its normal position and reattach the SRK base with the router. Move the slide arm until the cutting edge of the bit is at the setup line for the rabbet. Move the traveler until the bit is clear of the workpiece. Lower the bit to the desired depth and cut the rabbet. Note that if the rabbet is wider than your bit, you will want to make the cut in several passes, starting at the edge of the workpiece and working toward the setup line. You can route decorative edges much the same way. Simple, one-pass dados are just as easy, even when they're not parallel to the edge. Mark setup lines for the dado. Use a story stick to set the rail parallel to the setup line. With the story stick aligned perpendicular to one end of the setup line, place the rail against the other end of the story stick. Lightly clamp that end of the rail. Move the story stick to the other end of the setup line. Set and lightly clamp the rail. With the story stick at the first end, verify the alignment and tighten the clamp. Repeat at the second end, and the rail is now parallel to the dado setup line. Place the SRK on the rail and move the slide arm until the bit is on the setup line. Move the traveler until the bit is clear of the workpiece and lower the bit to the desired depth. Start the router and cut the dado. Note that the simple dado is used only when the router bit is the same size as the piece going into the dado. You can make simple stopped dados the same way. Just add a parallel stop to the rail. Move the traveler until the bit is where you want the dado to stop, and slide the parallel stop to the traveler and lock it down. Move the router off the workpiece, lower the bit, and make the cut. The traveler will stop when you reach the parallel stop. You can route slots with the addition of the other parallel stop. The setup is the same as for the stopped dado. You just set the second stop to position the bit at the other end of the slot. The bit is plunged in at one end of the slot and then moved to the other end. It is usually best to make several passes, cutting a little deeper with each pass. Fluting can be done with 2 parallel and 2 perpendicular stops. The parallel stops are set to stop travel at the ends of the flutes, and the perpendicular stops are used with a spacer to space the flutes. You will need a spacer that is the size of the distance between the centers of the flutes. Set the rail parallel to the flutes using your preferred method. Center the bit at one end of the first flute. Set the far stop at the traveler so that you can return to the same starting point with another workpiece. Start the router, Plunge the router to the desired depth and make the first cut. Raise the bit and turn off the router. Place the spacer between the traveler and the inside stop. Slide the stop to the spacer and lock it down. Remove the spacer, move the slide arm to the stop, and lock the control knob. Since it's usually best for uniform cuts to route in the same direction, move the router back to the other end of the workpiece. Plunge and make the second flute. Raise the bit and turn off the router. Loosen and move the stop from the traveler. Place the spacer between the stop and the traveler. Move the stop to capture the spacer and lock it down. Loosen the control knob and remove the spacer. Move the slide arm so the stop is against the traveler. Lock the control knob and slide the router back to the beginning of the next flute. Plunge and cut the flute. And repeat these steps until all the flutes are made. The SRK is limited only by your imagination.